Well, welcome everybody to the Ask an Accountant podcast, where we demystify accounting by simply asking your pressing questions from the industry's best and brightest. My name is Tony Wilson, your host, quirky friend, and total accounting nerd. Today I'm joined by my friend Yuri Kapilovich. Yuri is the managing partner at Kapilovich Associates, a New Jersey-based CPA firm providing valuable tax and consulting services to business owners in any stage of their business life cycle. Yuri, welcome to the show.
Hey Tony, nice intro, and you nailed my last name, man. You did it.
Oh,
Nice.
I was
Well
really
done.
nervous. I had to ask him beforehand because I'm like, there's like maybe 5 different ways I would see going about pronouncing this. I wasn't sure if it was Kapilovich or if it was Kapilovic.
Yeah,
So there was one.
you got it.
Yeah, but
Well
Kapilovich,
done.
for everybody's watching, if you're wanting to know how to pronounce Kapilovich and Associates, that's how you do it.
It was beautiful.
Definitely. Well, Yuri, I'm super excited to have you on the show today. One thing in particular that comes to my mind that I'm really interested to hear a little bit more from you about is actually something you had posted probably like maybe a week or two ago, but it has to do with your partnership with a company called Smart Money. Is that right? Smart MNE.
That's right.
You're a content writer for them right now, right?
That's right. I am. Yep.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about like what's that about and like how did that come about?
Sure. So interestingly enough, this one came from the an Instagram post that I had. So I don't have a lot of activity on Instagram. I don't do a lot of stuff on there. I'm kind of trying to figure out that strategy, but I posted this video with that Liam Neeson little skit thing that I did, with these are my skills, particular set of skills. Anyway, someone saw it, one of the guys, Ryan, and he emailed me and he said, "Hey, I saw your skit, really funny. We're actually looking for content writers. Would you do it?" And one thing about me that, I don't know if you could tell from my posts, but I am a yes man to the core. I mean, you send me something that looks remotely interesting, even if it's not so much my alley, even if I've never done it before, I'm going to say yes. So I said yes, and it came about. So it's the main publication, the main company is called Financial Edge. They are an investment banker-based kind of publication that issues guidance to these people. The reality of it is when you're like a starting associate, if you will, at the investment banking firms, dude, some of these people make like $300,000 a year their first year out of school. And there's a lot of potential there. There's a lot of things you can do with that money. And at the age of 22, 23, they get lost in the ways. So the idea behind Financial Edge and Smart Money that Ryan and that the company came up with is that they want to give that advice to those people who get $100,000 bonuses. And I kid you not, it is $100,000 bonus. So it's not that net after tax.
Holy
So
cow.
yeah. So one of the ideas that he approached me with is, hey, you post a lot about real estate, you talk about it, you get $100,000 post tax, it's ready sitting in your bank account. Let's roll. What do you do with it? And then he asked me to talk about a couple things. But, real estate was the first thing that jumped into the mind. So it was pretty cool. And then so that was one of the things that we spoke about. But we're going to have a lot of different variations on tax things and tax articles. And the whole point is it's fun. It's supposed to be a fun little article. So we got to put some, GIF files in there and all that stuff.
That's awesome. Well,
Yeah.
I got to imagine as you're sharing, kind of the target audience or what it's really meant for, knowing your background, which is something we're going to get into here in a minute, but knowing your background, I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense because like you work with, like that's been primarily your professional career is working with high net worth individuals like those folks who get $100,000 net bonus
Oh yeah.
payments.
Yeah. I mean, and the crazy thing is when you're working in the public accounting industry, especially at the big firms, especially with some of these big name firms, you get very much desensitized to money. And I mean, to be like even the $100,000 net bonus when you're at those firms, you're like, oh, these people are broke. I mean, like obviously I joke, but when you're working with 10, 15, $100 million a year type clients, it's just nuts. But one of my favorite things to do as an aside here, when I was at the public accounting, and if you're listening and you're in public accounting and you're working on these high net worth individuals, it's kind of cool to see how they live. And one of the big things I did, man, I would open up, literally, I'd get an assignment, I'd go into their tax return, prior year tax return, open it up, and got the address. And then I'm on, checking out how they live on Zillow or whatever it is. And it really kind of connects you to it, makes you feel a little more ownership on it, makes it a little more exciting. And really, I've looked at all of these houses, all these things, and they really excited me in my career. I post a lot about how the job, the industry is exciting. It's interesting, and it is. But I'm sure we'll get into it later. The fundamentals of the industry and the actual inner workings is what makes a lot of people be out.
That's so cool. I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, that's awesome. So content writer for Smart Money, or recently content writer for them. The other thing that comes to my mind, Yuri, is a recent post that you had made. It was a video where you were being interviewed by some, I think they were like seniors in a accounting, or they're accounting majors, seniors in college. Yeah. And you were doing an interview with them. They were just kind of asking you some things that were on their mind about the industry and all that kind of stuff. Can you share a little bit about like how did that come about, and like why did you agree to do that?
Sure. I'm going to start with saying this. LinkedIn is one of the most powerful tools, hands down, in the industry, in the professional world, and everything. I post value-added stuff on a daily basis, whatever comes to my mind, whether it's public accounting posts to help people in their careers, to really get the enjoyment out of it, and to really kind of bring a voice to what they're probably thinking about the industry. Like, oh my God, the shit sucks, like in some of it, right? But also, just have them find someone that at least when somebody verbalizes what you're thinking in the industry, it really helps you feel like you're not the only one. And trust me, a lot of the stuff that I post, you're not the only one. And in fact, everybody's feeling that. But the industry as a whole is great. Well, what happened with that is it's actually, I think it was a master's of tax program based out of Washington, Washington State. And so this guy that follows me, that had seen some of my posts, especially the public accounting posts and all of that, he sent me a message, said, "Hey, would you be interested in jumping in on it was actually a school project for them, for their master's class, to interview an entrepreneur or a business leader or a business owner." And as I told you before, I'm a yes man. So I got that. I said, yes, no, absolutely. No problem. So I hopped on that, and so it was pretty cool. Really, really great. But what's really, I want to highlight, and if you're in the public accounting industry, I guess this podcast is heavily geared towards public accounting folks. But if you're in the public accounting industry and you're a couple years in, it's so interesting to see that people in school, right, are asking questions, are thinking, and are already kind of on edge, if you will, about concerns that 5-6 years ago, people 5 years in would be starting to verbalize. Yeah. Extremely interesting to me, this phenomenon, right? Because what does that mean? That means that the concerns are earlier. People have much higher voice now, and they know that even though they're like first years into the accounting industry, they got a voice, and they're not going to take a lot of the stuff that called us folks, or people who have started 10 years ago would have taken. And I think a lot of it has to do with social media too. People seeing a lot of stuff. Everything is a lot more open as far as kind of like salaries and work-life balance and stuff like that.
Yeah, that is so huge. And I know we're going to get into it a little bit more as we talk about your story in public accounting. But yeah, that's super cool. I'm really thankful though that you took the time to do that interview with them, because I think we need more of that, right? We need people who can reach to the next generation of accountants and come alongside them, or people who are trying to figure out if they want to do accounting. Totally. Having people like this who can to speak to that is just really helpful. So thank you for doing it.
For sure.
That's part of the reason why I wanted to have you on the podcast, is because I want to hear a little bit more of your story. So if you wouldn't mind, just for everybody who's watching, Yuri's background is entirely public accounting. He's now running his own practice, but even that was a relatively recent change. This was last year where you launched your own practice. But you want to maybe just talk us through, your experience. For all you guys who are listening, Today's going to be a little bit of a different style episode. We're not going to do, specific questions as much as it's just going to be kind of a conversation and a journey along Yuri's experience through public accounting. So go ahead, start us off. I don't know if you want to start off at college or if you want to start off your first year in public. Start wherever you think.
Sure. That's a good one. I'm trying to think where the best place to start is, but I have always been business minded, and I always wanted to go. Interestingly enough, I thought I wanted to go into finance, and at the age of 15, I want to say, I was working at the mall selling some cell phone accessories. I'm Israeli myself, so with a bunch of Israelis working at the mall selling cell phone accessories, I got my introduction to entrepreneurship. On pricing things to say, listen, this is $40, but for you, it's $25. When really it was probably like 10 to them. But you learn these things, right? So got my business mind going and got that going. I started doing a little bit of that, selling the cell phone accessories myself, and I was doing that kind of out of my house. Ordered the first batch, was changing things out. Anyway. So let's fast forward into college. I get into college. I'm thinking I want to do finance. Yep. There was a few issues. I got an A in one class that ended up being a C because the professor messed it up and mixed me up with another student. Long story short, what that did was that caused me to not be able to get into the business school right away until I fixed it. When we fixed it, my GPA was high enough, no problem. But at that point, finance was done. Accounting was open. So interesting. It's interesting how it works out, right? But then I started doing accounting. I really enjoyed it. I specifically really enjoyed individual taxes, like right from the start. Jumped into doing some of those, like it's called VITA, which is like the lower income people. It was a free tax preparation service when you're in college. So it was pretty cool. Fast forward to getting out of, and I guess I'll tell my story too about I was supposed to have an internship in between my junior and senior year. That internship ended up being canceled literally in the last minute after all of the on-campus stuff was done. So like I couldn't even go back and try to get another one. Like I didn't even go to that career fair, if you will, or whatever it was, because I had an internship offer at hand, right? Then it gets canceled like probably like a week after everything was done. So I'm like, oh man, what am I going to do? So I ended up going into just tutoring that summer while my peers and everything were doing those big four, all that, glorious accounting internships and all that. So then it was a very big struggle for me to get my first job, but I finally did. And I got my job. I was super excited about it. I must have applied, dude, like hundreds of places.
And remind us again, timing, like was this 2009? What's the timing here?
Yeah, I graduated 2010 from Rutgers. Okay. So it was probably, right around then it was 2010. So it was probably like February, March 2010. So people were still kind of a little like reeling back from the recession, and it was a little bit slow. But so it took a while. I was calling, man. I was cold calling everyone, and I was, I would literally Google around me CPA firms. And I would pick up that phone, man, and I'd be like, "Hi, like I'm Yuri. I want to work for you." And it was funny because a lot of reactions were, most people ignored me, understandable. And then I also started emailing, and then somebody was like, "Wow, I like this guy. Like this is a forward-thinking person. Let me see what I can do." But nothing really shook out of it. Long story short, I get a job, McGladrey, very excited. It's a big firm. I finally got that offer. So we're heading towards graduation. I'm happy. A week before graduation. Sorry, Yuri, we're going to have to delay your start date by a year. And I'm like, oh, come on, man. Like, so you want to talk about just kind of living on the edge, right? And having to figure things out as you go. It's never what it seems like. And I talk about that a lot, right? It's never what it seems like. It's not this glorified path that I have with all amazing wins, right? Nobody's is. But somebody looks at that LinkedIn or whatever it is and seeing that on social media and saying, wow, amazing. But, there's a lot of struggles in the road. Anyway, so fast forward, they delayed my start date by a year. So I got to figure out what I'm going to do. Got my master's, in tax. And while I was getting my master's, I was actually working in New York for McGladrey as an intern. So they kind of gave me like an internship. So I was living in New Jersey. My school was in Pennsylvania, and I was working in New York. Yep. Yep. Yeah, pretty nuts, right? So I got through all that, and then the New York commute was just killing me, so it was a little bit rough. So I ended up finding a job closer to the school, and it all worked out. So then I actually my girlfriend, my wife now, girlfriend at the time, she got into optometry school in South Florida, in Fort Lauderdale area, and then I had to go. You know, I mean, it would have been really hard to do the long distance thing. So I ended up trying to look for a job in Miami or Florida or something. So I applied that, interestingly enough, because of my master's, and I had a very good grade in the master's. Now all of a sudden, Big Four was no problem, right? Whereas when I was in school, I probably had like a 3.4,
Yeah.
3.3, which is not bad, but for Big Four purposes,
Yeah.
I mean, they literally start at the 4.0s. We need 60 people. Let's run down that line, or whatever it is, right?
Right.
So I would never have made the cut then, but I sure did a year later. So it all works out well, and I'm a very, very big proponent and of it working out at the end. And don't dwell on those little L's that you have along the way, like mine. With the internship being delayed and the offer being delayed a year. It sucked at the time, though.
Well, and I'm really glad that you shared your story, because it's helpful to hear that talked about, because yeah, sometimes people get a great, super easy, like, yeah, I got the internship and then I was able to work like right away. Sometimes you have a super smooth experience, but your experience, it wasn't that. And I'm glad, because like, also for me, like, I didn't get a chance to intern. Like, I was an AP clerk all through college, so I didn't get a chance to intern. And I really struggled to even though I applied to EY, I applied to PwC, applied to some of these, Big Four, I didn't cut calls back. So sometimes that's just going to be what happens when it comes to public accounting.
Totally. And again, the journey is the journey, and you're going to succeed no matter what. Even if you tutor, if you don't get anything and you tutor, you're still going to succeed. So that's my big pointer that I want to make stress to everybody. If whoever's listening, don't get bogged down by the small stuff. Yes, it might kind of suck at the moment, but it's going to be all right in the long term, because it's a great industry.
That's awesome.
Now the cool thing is, so I will say, is while I was going to school, and I was also being an intern at CBiz at the time, which was in Plymouth Meeting, so it was pretty close to my job. I learned a lot, and I got to play around with the software. So then basically I was kind of like, when I got hired at EY Miami, I ended up having a decent amount of experience from my internship. So now I come in as this like level 1 staff to EY Miami with almost a year's worth of experience as an intern. So I was like this glorified tax. So I was getting like the highest ratings, all the whatever it is, like, good name, good everything, and people liked me. And Miami is a whole different vibe anyway. From a public accounting perspective, I loved it. Truth be told, even though it was EY and all that, it was amazing. We really had a good time. And so I was there for about 3.5, 4 years, and then moved back to the area here. Had a great experience. Was always in the PCS, private client services practice, which specializes in high net worth individuals and the businesses that they own. So I was actually, a few of my largest clients were, they like developed the entire skyline of Miami. Geez, these monsters, like money is just a crazy concept at that point. These people were worth easily $1 billion. So, so they were developing these buildings, and I got to learn about real estate, and I got to learn about all these different aspects. I also got to learn about retirees, right? Because so many people were actually, interestingly enough, from New Jersey, went to Florida to retire with a shitload of money.
Right.
Like just millions of dollars. And that's the way to retire, really, right? You're gonna have the yachts and all that stuff. And I got to go one time on the yacht on a client meeting. Now that was something else, man.
Wow.
Yeah.
I want to say that maybe that's unique to tax, because unlike Yuri, I started off in audit, so I did not go the tax route. I feel like tax, you guys get treated, I think, I could be wrong, but I think you guys get a little bit of the more Premier treatment and then audit, we get sent to count inventory in the middle of nowhere.
Well, maybe the inventory is yachts.
Oh, that's true. Then it's nice. Then it's nice.
But it is different. There's a lot of differences, right? I mean, the nice thing about audit is you're on a bigger engagement, which means that you don't have to worry about filling up your timesheet.
That's true.
If you get assigned to a client with an inventory count and it's a large enough client, dude, you're going to be out there for 2 weeks not worrying about your schedule. On the tax side of things, especially in the private client services realm, right? You're talking about 5 hours each, sometimes 10, sometimes 30.
Oh.
You got to really manage that schedule.
Yeah.
And it's a super big striking point for me in the industry when I was going through it. Make sure it's as a leader, as the admins in the public accounting world, everything, make sure you're stressing that scheduling, because especially on the tax side, it is super important. And I mean, to me, it's step one, right? If somebody tells you they want to do X thing, such as high net worth individuals or whatever, but you don't have a focus on scheduling, right? How are you ever going to get them that work? They're going to get very discouraged, demotivated, and leave.
Yeah.
It's that simple. And especially now when leaving is more prime.
Well, and it's interesting because I know that scheduling, it seems like it's probably a bigger deal when you're talking about like the higher volume of clients that you get in the PCS, the private client services realm for tax. But like you said, a lot of times for audit, they're a lot larger engagement, so it's not as much of an issue. Although sometimes you get some scheduling things where you're like on 2 clients at once, and then it's just chaos. But but for when you're talking about it, like you're juggling. I mean, how many clients are you juggling at any one time as an associate?
Well, if your scheduling is done right. And I've had it in maybe like one firm, I want to say, where the scheduling was done pretty well. And I knew my schedule, again, and it didn't change drastically. Look, the reality of it is your schedule will change. You got to be on top of, to answer your question, roughly on a whole busy season. 200, 250. On a whole busy season. Well, because think about it, right? I mean, you're dealing with, again, and some of these firms had a wide range. I could be dealing with someone who's making $150,000 a year on a W-2 who just happen to be clients. They shouldn't be clients. That's a different story. They shouldn't be clients of these big firms, but legacy clients, whatever you want to call them, $150,000 a year to $100 million a year, right? I mean, you can imagine where the priority lies. But but that was the realm. That's what you're dealing with. So when I say 200, 250, sometimes even 400 in my experience, clients, I'm not talking. Some clients can take 1 hour, and some client can take 300 hours. Right. So again, this is why scheduling is super important. And I used to try to do my own when it was not done, and even when it was done for me, kind of still manage it further to say, what are the hours? And that is the biggest thing, right? What is the budgeted hours for this job? What is the budgeted hours for this job? I drew it out in my own schedule, my own Excel, and try to get a gauge on it. Now, the reality of it is a client's not going to give you all the information when you think they will. They're not going to give you all the information when you magically say February 15th, which would be amazing, right? In my own practice now, I mean, there's no way around it. You're getting me the information by the end of January. And I will come to you. But to get it. But the reality of it is, right, you can only do the best that you can. But now, I mean, I can travel, I can do all that. You have a lot less control when you're at the firms. So the schedule shifts, and that's when it becomes crunched. And the biggest problem is, if you think about it, W-2s are due when? January 31st, right? To be completed. 1099s are due when? February 15th to be issued. So
true.
Just think about that right there. So if you even have 150 clients assigned to you, you're not getting the information until February 15th at the least. So now is the crunch time. And realistically, by the time all the clients gather all their stuff, now you're really talking like late February, early March.
So just to kind of recap a couple things I've heard you say, so especially from that transition from being an accounting grad or like graduating from college into your internship or your first year, just know that that journey is not necessarily a linear journey. That's one big thing I'm hearing you say. And
Yep.
another thing is like, yeah, if you really want to get into these bigger firms, do really well in school. That's one way that you're going to get priority when it comes to being picked.
Yep.
And then the other thing I heard you say now, as we look into kind of the first couple years, it sounds like scheduling is a big thing for people to wrap their head around. And you took a very proactive approach.
Always.
Where I imagine, some people might be a little bit more passive about it. They're like, hey, somebody else is scheduling me for it, so I'm not going to necessarily think about it. But it sounds like that's a tip that you would give.
Absolutely. It's one of the largest tips that I can give. Now, I will caveat this. It didn't bode well. It didn't bode very well for me. Why? Because when you push back against, what people expect is, here's the schedule I'm going to give you, and you're going to do it, and we'll figure it out. And a lot of times, if it's a good scheduling system, then there's more thought to it. It looks a little better, but sometimes it's more chaotic. Like, I don't know, these are your clients. We'll figure it out as we go, right? I didn't take that. I was not. When you tell me I figure it out as we go, I would typically push back and say, can we figure it out now? It's February. I would love to know what I'm actually working on.
Yeah.
It doesn't. You have to go about it in a smoother way, and I was pretty decent about going at it in a smoother way. But even in a smoother way, it doesn't come off great because you're pushing back against the curve. So this is why the message here is more so for the management, more so for the people doing the scheduling. It's hard. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of clients. But even the effort, if the real true effort is put into it, like, you're going to retain people. People are going to be happier. People are going to enjoy what they're doing because they're going to feel, okay, look, at least they're trying to give me my clients that I want to work on, the closely held stuff. They're giving it to me. And yeah, okay, well, maybe it doesn't, maybe I'm not going to get all of it, but if like 90% of what I want to do is what I'm doing, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
10%, whatever, no biggie.
Yeah.
But what happens is when you don't schedule, when it's chaotic, there's no way you're doing that. So you're going to end up being more like 40% what people want to do and 60% random.
And the result is higher churn. Like you said, there's going to be higher turnover rate in terms of, because people, similar to kind of your story, although from what I remember, your reasoning for leaving EY wasn't because you didn't like EY. I think it sounds like you really did enjoy it, but it was time to move.
That's right.
So, but similar to your story for the other instances, like a lot of the reason for moving to the next firm is because like you knew that there was going to be better opportunities, a better fit for you.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, right? Because I tend to go on tangents, so thanks for reeling me back. So EY, right? We finished that. I loved it there in Miami. I moved back. I'm from New Jersey. Moved to Florida. Came back. So when I came back, I came back to the Philadelphia office of EY, and then I wanted to move to Central Jersey because that's kind of where we were moving to, buying a house, family, all that stuff. So EY didn't have my practice at the Central Jersey location, and they wanted me to go to New York. I didn't really want to go back to New York, so I started looking around. So if you look at my LinkedIn, you're going to see that after EY, I am consistently at right around a year and a half at every single firm since then. And there were, let me just count real quick, 4, four. Yeah. So 4, four after that at a year and a half each. And the truth of it is, it was always like you said, it was never, I never jumped for the money. I didn't jump just because I thought I really truly jumped to go find my spot in the public accounting world. I wanted to make partner. I wanted to find a firm that took care of its people. I wanted to find a firm that focused on scheduling, and I wanted to have a good experience and be able to make sure that the staff under me had a good experience.
Yeah.
And maybe to my detriment, but it's just the way I am, right? I like to take care of people. I like to make sure that the people under me are super happy, because when they're working and they know that you're taking care of them and you get their back, man, the work product is going to be out of this world.
Absolutely.
It's that simple to me. But management doesn't always see it that way. But that's what happened. So I went from EY, Big Four, to Eisner Amper, to Wilkin and Gunplan. So kind of started going down the, Eisenramper smaller than EY, Vulcan Gelplan smaller than Eisenramper. Went to Cohn Resnick, bigger than Eisenramper, right? Then I went to Witham, lower than kind of like right around there. Yeah, right around Eisenramper, a little bit. So interestingly enough, again, just trying to figure out different sizes and if I like the style. And in every single place, I just kind of like learned what I didn't like about the management style, right? And that's what I took away from those places. That's what I applied to my practice. And it just got, at a certain point, it just got to this like passion, right? For what I want to do in my own firm and how I want to grow and how I want to change the industry. Ambitious. I mean, it's a lot because it's a lot of, there's a lot of obstacles in the way. That's that, man. And then once it started growing and more and I just was like, man, I was just butting heads with everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the truth. And so yeah, that's what caused me to kind of go out on my own.
Yeah. So the, obviously we're talking about scheduling was a big thing. I mean, it seems straightforward enough. It seems simple enough, but it ends up being quite significant when you talk about being in public accounting and specifically in tax. Can you talk to us a little bit more about, what were some of those ways in which you maybe didn't always see eye to eye with management, ways that you were like, you learned from what you saw in the sense that you don't want to replicate that? What were some of those things?
Sure. I would say most of it related around treatment of staff, right? The billable hours, the constant push for the utilization, to be perfectly honest, archaic practices that I also speak about in my, in my posts on LinkedIn. All those things kind of started, but the biggest thing to me was staff treatment, right? To me, it's not that difficult. You approach every single person. I remember I told one scheduler a while back, I said, they were confused. They were like, oh, how do I manage their schedules better? Which was a good question. So good job with, having that in mind, right? And I said, here's how you do it. Every week on a certain day, pick a day and go around all the staff and speak to them. And not you're doing this, right? It's what do you want to work on? What's your schedule looking like? Are you enjoying your work? It's not that hard, man. It's not that hard to speak like that. But the problem is, look, there's only so many hours in the day. Everybody's got to do stuff. I get that. But that's the approach, right? If you took that approach and you try to take care of the people and your mentality was around that was your culture, and not the culture that's in the commercials, right? Or in the we have great culture. No,
pong tables and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly. But the real culture.
Yeah, right.
The real, what are you doing there? Because all you have to do is ask. And ask and try to actually do that. Yeah. Just deploy the empathy towards the staff. And I mean, there's been plenty of examples. I won't name the firm, but something to the extent of, on a Saturday, I was the manager, right? And the partner, everybody was expected to be in. It was you got to be in the seats on a Saturday. I don't care where you live, whatever. I lived an hour and a half away. The staff, I don't remember where they lived. But the point is, they said, hey, can I work from home today on the Saturday? I said, sure, whatever. I don't care. I'm going to be in, but I don't really care. And then the partner comes to me and said, where is that person? Where is she? So I'm like, she's working from home. He's like, who allowed that? I was like, me, and then I got yelled at, screamed at, all that stuff. So you take the brunt. I always, took the brunt. The staff that I worked for, that worked for me. I mean, it's funny. I said staff that I worked for.
You got it right. I think you got it right the first time.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny. That's exactly how it should be.
Yeah.
That's how you grow a good firm. But
that's good.
Aside from that, the staff that worked for me at the time never knew the brunt of the stuff that I was taking on from the heat, if you will, from the partners, from this and that, because I was covering for them. So if I was to give another advice, and I'm jumping around a little bit, but yeah, if I was to give another advice to anybody listening, it's to obviously scheduling important, but you as a staff might not have as much control over that. Focus on expectation management. It's what I did my entire career, and I still do to this day, just to my clients, right? Let me give you an example. Yeah. So as a manager, my job would be to manage expectations of the partner, the client, and the staff. And As the staff, your expectation management is your manager. So what I would do is I would say, okay, client sends the information, and naturally, when am I going to get my tax return? I hate that question, but whatever.
Right.
So assuming you gave me all the information, right? So I always put a cushion in there. I would say, hey, what about, like 2 weeks, maybe 2-3 weeks, right? But before I answer that, see, this is the difference. Before I answer that question, I'm going to go to the staff and I'm going to say, hey, what's your workload looking like? And I know you're assigned to this client. Can you work on it? And when can you work on it? So let's just say in this context, they'll say to me, oh, I can only start next week. I'm backed up with a job. Great. I don't really care when you start. That sounds good to me. Next week, then that gives me lead time. I got to think about my own schedule. It's a lot of thinking going on here, but you got to do it. And then I say, okay, so I got the idea. A week from now, you're going to start. I'll probably review it as soon as you get it to me. So I'm telling the client 2.5 weeks. Yeah. Right? And the partner's got to look at it too, sometimes depending on the size. So again, if a lot of times, if the client reached out to the partner first, it's a no message in the no message in the email. Forward the information from the client straight to me. No message, just get it done, basically. Right? And then again, it's where is it? Is the next question. And so to me, I would say, okay, like I'd respond to that, and after I spoke to the staff, and I'll tell the partner 2.5 weeks. Nobody likes that. Yeah. But you got to take the brunt of that. And when I would say 2.5 weeks, they'll be like, no. Oh, what about no? That's too late, right? Without even speaking to the client. That was the craziest part.
Oh, that's nuts.
Yeah. So I'll be like, listen. I'll be like, I mean, that's what it is. That's what the clients can do. I mean, that's what the staff can do, right? And that's what's the priority. So you kind of manage expectations. Nobody likes that email when I would send that. Many people would just say nothing, but I was proactive, right? I feel like if I tell you when, it's better. And some partners loved it, some partners didn't.
Yeah. Well, and arguably, I mean, back to the point you were saying, it takes a lot of thinking. I'm like, well, that's kind of the role of a manager, right? Like you're doing that heavy lifting, and like you said before, you're acting a little bit as that buffer so that the people who are doing the bulk of the work, the associates, are being somewhat insulated from having to deal with all those pieces so that they can be more effective and efficient in their role. So that's super awesome. I want to maybe go back to something you had mentioned before, just basically talking about how a lot of what you've learned about how to lead and manage teams, specifically in public accounting, has come from what you've learned you don't want to replicate, right? So you've seen the opposite of it on display in people. Yeah. Do you have any examples where you've seen like a specific person who comes to mind as being like, that's the kind of manager I always wanted to be, and then you kind of modeled yourself after them?
Yeah, totally.
Do you want to give a shout out?
Sure. So in Miami, Miami, Richard Bruguera, who I still to this day speak to pretty frequently. He's now partner. So a great story of him and his story is interesting too. He's going to be on my podcast eventually.
Ooh, I like it.
Yeah. But his story is interesting. He actually started as an audit staff, got interested in tax, left and switched from audit to tax in like the 3rd or 4th year, when most people will be afraid because you got to take a little bit of a step down, right? You can't be a senior in audit, switch over to tax, even in the same firm, and be still a senior. Right. You're going to need to relearn a lot of stuff.
You're right.
So his journey was very interesting, and he was super, to this day, takes care of the staff, super down to earth guy. And just, he did what I do now. It's not intentionally I think about it, but if I was to go back when you asked me that question, that jumped out at me. So
that's awesome.
He's the man. He's still the man. Yeah. So Richard, if you're listening, you're the man.
Shout out there. Do you mind if I give a quick shout out to my experience in public? So
do it.
Gentleman by the name of Mike Delorier. I have no idea if or when he'll watch this, but I'm for sure going to tag him on LinkedIn on this. But very similar to what you're saying. He's super down to earth. I always remember there were certain people I would talk to that I was terrified of having a conversation with or asking heaven forbid a first year associate ask a question from a senior or a manager.
Yeah.
But I felt like this guy was always there with me, and he was like, and there's a lot of times he didn't know the answer. He's just like, yeah, we're going to just try to figure it out together.
Yeah.
But yes, so management leadership is critical in public accounting. And Yuri, I'm so glad
Absolutely.
that you brought that up on
It's
this show.
true. Yeah, it's true. And I mean, and that's what makes people stay in the industry if you're good. And the interesting thing is in EY in South Florida, not just Miami, which I was splitting my time with Boca and Miami at the time. Interestingly enough, I mean, the turnover there, a lot of people are still there in those offices, a
Wow.
lot, right? Management there was great to me, especially in the PCS practice. I thoroughly enjoyed it. To be honest, if I didn't move back to Jersey, who knows? I probably would have still been there, right? And it's a testament to EY, right? So you're talking about EY, which is a big firm, one of the biggest churn, right? Big four kind of, mill of people that comes in and goes out. A lot of people are still there. That should tell you something, right? That they're doing right. So it's no surprise to me that that's where the motivation for me came from.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of the interesting. If you do management right, if you treat people well, that's number one. Number one, because
Absolutely.
here's the reality: you can have I could have $50 million of revenue in my firm, right? I mean, it'll be insane. That's an absolute absurd number. But you can have hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue in your firm. If you don't have any staff to do the work, what you gonna do?
Yeah.
That's why it's number one, not clients. Staff number one, clients number two.
That's so good.
Clients are important. Clients are important, but again, staff is way more important because that's who's doing the work.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Keep your employees as number one, keep your staff as number one, and then they will treat your clients in the way that you need them to be treated. So
yeah,
I think that's super awesome. Okay, so Yuri, so let's fast forward. I know there's a number of new firms you came to. You got a lot of experience from there. Last year, you launched Kapilovich and Associates.
yep.
So I think one thing that's on my mind is I'm like, are you hiring? Like, what's the roadmap look like now for your own firm?
Yeah, it's a great question. With everything I spoke about, I mean, I would be very humbled, very honored, just really ecstatic to hire the first person to work for me. With everything I said, like I said, I love it a lot. But right now, I'm still in the growth phase. There's a lot of taking on new clients and everything like that. But for now, I have a part-time bookkeeper who is phenomenal. She's great, but she kind of works part-time, works on the weekends and evenings, whatever it is, whatever works for her. But she's only doing like 15, maybe 20 hours a month.
Sure.
So the need for full-time, not yet, but hopefully, if all goes well and and the growth continues, I would probably looking at hiring someone by the end of the year.
Yeah.
Which would be great. Now the other thing that comes with that I'm super passionate about, if you will, is my vision, man. When I hire that person's gonna be well paid. This is not and that's the other thing in the industry, right? Even though I'll be taking a little bit of an L on my end, right? But again, when you motivate people with two things, which is ownership, right? Ownership, enjoyment of their job. I guess three things: ownership, enjoyment of their job, and a good salary. You're not gonna lose them.
That's really good. I love it.
Right.
I love it. You so obviously this is all about, like, this podcast is all about learning and demystifying accounting. As you've now launched your own practice, I can imagine it is a very different beast than actually working within a firm. You're now working as a solo practitioner. Can you tell us a little bit about what this last almost year has been like for you and like what you've been learning?
Sure. So there's so much learning. I mean, it's even hard to put into words as I pictured back. The journey is interesting. It's a lot of it is trial and tribulations, figuring out what works for you, figuring out what doesn't work for you. I mean, at the core, right? I focus on $5 million and under in gross revenue. I try to keep my clients fairly simple, man. I don't need these crazy complicated things. I want to provide value to my clients and be just, a person that they hang out with. Next week, I'm going off on a big deep sea fishing trip with one of my clients on his boat. Let's
Nice.
go. So
Boat or
that's
yacht?
a little bit of both. I guess for
Okay.
now it's a boat.
Okay.
It's a 39-foot fishing vessel with like tuna tower, it's called. So it's
Wow.
but he's also in the process of getting a 55-foot version of the same thing. So maybe it'll become a yacht, fishing yacht. Anyway, I digress. So I will tell you this: in my journey, which is a little bit different trajectory than a lot of kind of solo practitioners, I knew from the start what I did not want to do, which was 1040 shop. I do not want to be a value business. And I will tell you right now, since August, since I started, I have said more no's to clients than yes. I am to me, it's I'm looking for a business owner first, right? That's the relationship and whatever. And then the 1040 next. But to take on 1040 only, to be a volume practice, pumping out $200 1040s, that's not what I'm doing. Nothing wrong with it. In my mind, if you can do it, it's great. It's just not what I'm passionate about. So like I said, when I'm not passionate about it, I would say no more than yes. And then I also do the consulting stuff, working for another public accounting firm where I kind of help them with their clients, just like 15 hours a week sometimes, or at least one day a week.
That's awesome.
So that's another thing that I do. But from my practice, I just do it's funny, man, I just do whatever I want to do. So if there's a post I want to do, if there's a video I want to do, if there is anything, go out on the bike and record a little bike thought. That's what I do. Bike thoughts. Hashtag. It's what I do. Yeah, that's right. It's what I do. And so that's really what the practice is built around. And I'm doing it a little bit differently. There's going to be a release of my website soon, which you will, when it releases, you will see a fundamentally different approach to the tax world, to just the approach on what you think an accounting firm is, right? In 2022, it's time to get with the days and get with the program.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's more of a brand building thing for me. The hashtag. Yeah, the fun CPA is really the journey, right?
Yeah.
So a lot more to it, but that's the idea. So I don't know if I really answered the question. I feel like I just
I think that's a couple things that I heard, and one thing I think is really clear is like when you're in a firm, there's a lot of stuff that you actually don't need to think about. I mean,
correct.
Yeah, you need to think about like, how do you manage expectations? How do you, lead people well? How do you manage your time? All these kind of things.
Yeah,
when
absolutely.
You go and launch out on your own, like it's a much broader gamut. So even the concept of like hashtag brand building, like you need to be on for that. Where when you're working for the other firms, you're not working about marketing and sales and that kind of stuff.
No.
So.
And interestingly enough, I had a bunch of these ideas that I've put out on LinkedIn, over the last almost a year, that have been like seared in me for a long time working for these public accounting, and I'll bring it up to them, to the marketing departments and all that, but it was always kind of shut down because it didn't. The vision wasn't seen at the bigger firms, which is fine. But again, like that's the idea, right? Every single idea, some ideas come to me, and I'm like, let's roll with it. I just had a message to me on LinkedIn. Someone saw something on mine, reached out to me and said, hey, we want to feature you on this. Yep. Let's get after it. Or, hey, I'm on a podcast. Would you be a guest? Yep. Right. Would you do this? Would you do that? Would you write for a publication? Yep. So it's just tasting different things. The boundaries are dropped when you leave the public accounting world. There are no limitations to what you can do. You're not just doing taxes. You're not just doing bookkeeping, right? You have the ability, and you can do those things. There's nothing wrong with them. You make a great money, but if you want to do something different, you can. And if it doesn't work, you can always go back to those other things.
That's very true. That is so true. Yeah, because like that's one thing that I think, like when you're stuck in your normal 9-to-5 job or like whatever that place is, it can feel scary to make that launch, but
for sure,
you can always go back if you want to. So always.
And I say this a lot, and it's very important, and especially when I was leaving, right? My backup to anything, God forbid, happening with the business. My backup is somebody else's potential reach goal.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think about that a lot.
Right.
And I take that, I do not take that for granted, right? That's take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
That's why I feel comfortable. If I want to make that jump back, I'll make that jump back if need be. But that said, I will also caveat, and it's very important to me to also say that there is nothing wrong with working in a W-2 job.
Oh, yeah.
There's nothing wrong with doing that, as you said, 9 to 5. It's like, it's frowned upon, it seems, on social media that everybody is saying, oh yeah, you gotta go have a business. Nah, man, if you're making money and you taking care of your family, and you're not at 100% happiness in your life, but you're doing it and you're leaving work at the door, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree with that sentiment. Well, Yuri, thank you so much for talking us through a little bit about your experience, especially tax experience. It's a little different than audit. I'm super excited to continue to follow you as you make progress in your own firm. It sounds like there's a lot of exciting things on the horizon, whether that's hiring or, kind of changing strategic direction or like honing in on what your strategic direction is. Lots to come when it comes to Yuri. So super excited. Yuri, I want to give you an opportunity now to speak to a very specific audience. And this is an audience who they're maybe finishing up their junior year in college and they're accounting majors. So they're now coming into their senior year of college. So if you had an opportunity to speak to those people, what would be some words of wisdom from Yuri about anything that pertains to them?
Yeah, my biggest words of wisdom, and I just going back to my own self, and like I said, being nervous about like what happens if I don't get the internship, what happens if I do, and these decisions that you think are so like life altering, they're not. So my advice really to a junior, to a senior in college is, go with the flow. A lot of people, I get so many questions about what's better, Big Four or mid-size or boutique or blah, blah, blah. And my answer is, it doesn't matter. Right? It doesn't matter, because if you just start and get your foot in the door and start working on some stuff, see if you enjoy it, see if you like it. And if you don't like it, you leave, or you switch internally from audit to tax, or you switch from mid-size to Big Four. It's so simple, right? So don't get bogged down by these decisions. Don't get bogged down by, I need to decide audit versus tax for the rest of my life. Yeah. As I said in my example before with my mentor, Richard, that didn't matter to him. He's successful. Right. And that's that, man. I mean, it's just really, you can figure it out on the job. You're never going to figure it out from school. You're never going to figure it out from 3 classes of intro to accounting.
That's right.
Of any sort, whether you like audit or tax. And the only thing you got is the noise of the other students, and that's it, right? When I was applying, I remember I was a junior. Yeah, I was a junior. I was applying to this job. And I remember somebody telling me, like, don't apply as tax, apply as audit. They hire a lot more audit people. Apply as audit. I distinctly remember this to this day. Like, it's almost like, why did you choose tax? Like, why did you decide to apply to tax? It's a bad idea, right? Here we are. And it was not a bad idea. So, and the thing, again, the industry, get excited about the industry. It's changing. It's going to change. That's right. Whether it's by my one post at a time, as I keep saying in all of my comments, or a combination of the forces. But you could see the tides shifting, with staff having a lot more say than they used to. And I think somebody old school mentality retiring in the near future. It's going to change. It's going to be a good industry. And it's already a good industry internally once you get around that kind of not enjoyable pretext to it. Yeah.
Totally get that. So all that I'm hearing you say, Yuri, is especially for those near accounting grads, there's a lot of little things that feel like big things, but don't sweat the little things.
Nope. In the grand scheme of things, in the long run, it ain't going to matter.
That's so good. I mean, I feel like I need to listen to that. I think I need to take that advice. So I appreciate you.
I mean, I need to take that advice, right? We all need to take that advice. Yeah, we on a given day, my schedule's all over the place. Like I'm running around a little crazy. I have no consistency in my day. It's wild. It's a wild ride. And sometimes I go, oh my God, today just sucked. Like I didn't get anything done. Oh, there's always tomorrow. But during the time you get nervous, you get anxiety, you get all that. It's all normal and all that. But in the grand scheme of things, it don't matter.
Just little things. Just little things. Don't sweat the little things. Yuri,
Nope.
you're the
Yes,
man.
sir. Thank you, man.
Really appreciate you sharing that. If people, after listening to this, they want to get to know you more, they want to reach out to you, what would be the best way for them to find you?
LinkedIn. Let's go.
Yeah,
I answer pretty much every single message unless you're slap pitching me or pitch slapping me. Slap pitching. Pitch slapping me.
Yep.
If you're not doing that and you're genuine, we're talking. And I've had many conversations with people over this last almost a year where I guided them, helped them get jobs. Two of them just nailed some big jobs, man. It's really exciting to me. One EY intern, one senior, almost senior associate in CBiz. We've been chatting since like September of both of these guys. So, I mean, I'm not a recruiter or anything, but I'll just give you the tips because it's super important. And this industry needs a wake-up call.
Yeah. Amen to that. Amen to that. So LinkedIn, go and follow, find Yuri, follow the dude. He posts great stuff. If you're looking for him and you follow me, I'm sure you'll be seeing me interact with some of his posts as well. But I can attest, Yuri is a great person to get to know. He's super easy to talk to. So shoot him a message, especially you accounting grads or soon to be accounting grads. He's a great resource.
Or managers or whoever.
Or managers, right?
Anybody.
Anybody.
Yeah, anybody.
Literally
anybody. Hit me up. Literally.
Anybody. Awesome. Well, thank you again, Yuri, so much. I appreciate you coming on the show today. And for everybody who is listening, I hope you found value in what we had to cover today in our episode. If you have pressing accounting questions that you would like future guests to answer, you can email them to me at tony@equip.com, which is ACCQUIP.com. Also, if you are an accounting professional or you know somebody who would be interested in coming on the show, please reach out to me as well. We're going to be taking off 1 week. Next week, we're not going to be doing a live podcast, but we are going to come right back the week after, featuring none other than Lucas Sandal, the founder of Accounting Couture. So you are not going to want to miss that episode. Friday, June 24th. Be sure to be there. But as always, everybody, I want to thank you again for taking the time to listen today. Thank you for tuning in, and keep calm and keep your clothes on.
There we go.